Good morning. It's time for another daily devotional. Today is James chapter 4. We're going to cover verses 6 through 12, and this is episode number 10 of our study of the book of James. So let's turn there and do a quick recap first as we get into this teaching today. So what we have been looking at, this just again recap of talking about the condition of a person's heart, and this condition of a person's heart is very important to understand. We have hearts, two kinds of hearts that I want to talk about. Just the divided heart, where Christ is there, but there's a lot of me that is battling with God. There's a battle going on here for control. And then there is a surrendered heart, a heart where Christ is in control, and I have dealt with myself. I have dealt with the selfishness, allowed God to deal with the selfishness and self-centeredness of my heart and of my life. And so what we looked at last time was that picture of all of that division. Out of that division comes things like James says it comes lust, comes murder, or Jesus associated that with anger. What comes out of that is selfish desires. And so James talks specifically about selfish desires. And then he also talked about coveting comes out of that as well. To covet is to want what someone else has, to really have that greedy kind of a heart, coveting kind of a heart, wanting what they have. And so James was talking about and forcing them to deal with and look at their own hearts and really come to a point of surrender in their own lives. And so we looked at all of that last time in the first 5 verses of James chapter 4, but we're going to get into verse 6 here today. So let's look at verse 6 and jump into that part of the teaching. So here's what it says in the book of James. So in chapter 4, verse 6, he says this, and he's going to talk specifically about how do I deal with the divided heart? What is the means that I'm able to deal with this? So he says this, here's the solutions for dealing with this problem that is going on not only within you, but it's going to manifest itself in the life of the church or in the life of the family. He says, but he, that is God, gives more grace. Therefore, he says, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Now he uses that. That's actually a phrase that is used throughout the Bible, but specifically in Proverbs, he talks about that. He talks about resisting the proud. Resisting the proud is standing in opposition to, but he gives grace to the humble. Therefore, submit yourself to God. So right in that phrasing, he talks about how do you deal with the divided heart. So he says specifically, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So there's the trick on how do I deal with this. My heart is divided, the me stuff. How do I deal with the me stuff? Well, I have to humble myself. When I stand in resistance to God, in other words, when I'm full of pride, so think of pride coming out of the me side. That's pride would be synonymous with the selfish or the self-centeredness, the selfish desires. That area. How do I deal with that area? If I resist and I want to hold on to this, God will stand in resistance to me. And so how do I deal with this so that my heart can be right? Well, I have to humble myself. There has to be a humility that I come before God, and there has to be a willingness to submit, to put myself underneath the control and the power of God, to submit myself to him. When I submit myself to him, I humble myself. No longer will God stand in resistance. Now he will stand in grace over me, and he will give grace to me when I am willing to do that. So let's keep going. So he says, look, if you want to deal with that divided heart, then I want you to humble yourselves. I want you to submit yourself to God. Now, there's another point of resistance that gets brought up when it says God resists the proud. Now he's going to say, once you have submitted yourself to God, now you resist the devil. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. He is one who, when my heart is divided, he is the one who is giving a lot of the temptation. How do I deal with that? Well, I humble myself before God. I submit myself to God. He gives grace to me, And then I, in turn, with a surrendered heart, I stand in opposition to the devil. I resist the devil, and he will flee. That's a promise of God, is that if you stand up in resistance, he is not going to hang around. He will flee from you. And so again, he's going to talk again about, just a reminder how you deal with this divided heart issue. Well, he said before, I want you to humble yourself. I want you to submit yourself to God. Now, draw near to God. If you do that, he will draw near to you. So there's a promise given. If you draw near to God, he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands. So cleanse. Allow God to cleanse. That's the process of consecration and sanctification that happens theologically. You seek the cleansing that God provides. You cleanse your hands, you sinners. I've got a sin problem. I need to cleanse my hands. I need to purify my heart. You double-minded. So there again is the picture that we have been dealing with all of this time. Dividedness, double-mindedness. How do I deal with the double-mindedness? Well, he's given us the examples. He says humble. So there's a humility, humble yourself. He says to submit yourself. He says draw near. He says to cleanse your hands. He says purify your hearts. All of that is about dealing with the sinful nature of my life, dealing with the problem in my life, dealing with the thing that gets in the way of God's moving in power in my life. It's not God's problem, it's my problem. And if I can get my heart right, life will begin to change. So lament and mourn, that is synonymous with brokenness. Come to God in brokenness, weep, realize the mess of your life, realize that you desperately need this, and then let your laughter, the things that you used to turn to for pleasure and joy, turn that into mourning and your joy to gloom. So that's all synonymous with the idea of brokenness. Come to God in brokenness, realizing that God, you're my only hope. I desperately need you. Now, I've used this example before, but it's an accurate example where Jesus is telling a parable of a Pharisee and a tax gatherer, and they are both at the temple and they are praying. And the Pharisee looks over at the tax gatherer. He lifts up his prayer to God, saying, God, I thank you that I'm not like this guy over here, that I thank you for who I am. I give tithes of all I get. I pray. I seek you. I thank you that I'm not like this guy over here. But the guy over here, the tax gatherer, realized the brokenness of his life. He realized the sin of his life. He realized the deep need of his life. He was in brokenness and mourning. He wouldn't even lift his eyes to heaven because he realized the depth of the junk in his life. He humbled himself. Now, here's the promise given. Humble yourselves in the sight of God, in the sight of the Lord, and what will he do? Just note this. He will lift you up. If you, in dealing with the me stuff, if you will humble yourself, if you will submit yourself, if you will draw near to him, if you will cleanse your hands, if you will purify your hearts, if you will come to him realizing the brokenness of your life, you come to him in that manner, asking the Lord for forgiveness, asking the Lord for fullness, asking the Lord to take control of your life, then he will do it. He will lift you up. Let's keep going. Finally, James says this. Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. He who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who are you to judge another? So let's talk about this. Again, this is going to be ultimately the picture of what a surrendered heart is going to look like. Your heart is surrendered to Christ, and as a result of it being surrendered to Christ, don't speak evil. So no evil speak. Again, that goes back to the tongue. Our tongue, how you use your tongue. Well, if you're surrendered to Christ, it's going to be a different story. He also talks about not being a judge. So no no judgment. Now, a lot of people have really taken that out of context, the whole idea of judging. They will say, well, you can't judge me, meaning let me just live my life the way that I want to live it and don't say anything contrary. Don't say anything. Don't take a stand any differently than the thing that I want to do. Now, I want you to notice the context of what James says. He says, he who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother. Okay, who is his brother? Well, these are fellow believers. These are other believers. That's what he's talking about, other believers. So don't, it looks pretty bad there. Other believers. Okay, so he says, don't speak evil of a brother. Do not judge a brother. Don't speak evil of them. Be just one who is a doer of the law. Don't be a judge. There's only one who is the judge, one who's the lawgiver. That's Christ. So that has been taken out of context so many times, and we have to be careful not to take it out of context. God actually tells us that we are to warn and we are to tell people God's standards. To tell people God's standards is not judgment. That is just giving them the truth of what God's word says. They can do with that truth whatever they want to do with it, but it's not Christians who have come up with the standards. It is God who has come up with the standards. But that really summarizes the problem of life. And let me wrap all of this up with a little bit of a teaching about what Godship really is. Now, Godship is the desire for me to sit on the throne. It's really the divided heart. You can think of the idea of a divided heart as a Godship issue. And a Godship issue says this: who will be the God of my life and who will sit on the throne of my life? And here's how all of this plays out in life in real terms. First of all, I want you to think of it this way, that God, just draw it out here in three parts, God, who is all Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, he was the creator. Now, as the creator, what did he create? Well, the answer to that is he created all things. Everything was created by his hand. There wasn't anything that was made that was not created by him. Jesus, the firstborn, the Son of God, was there at creation. Jesus is fully part of the Godhead. That is the Trinity that we are talking about. That God is one with three distinct personhoods: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He is the creator. Now, as the creator, one of the things that was created was us. We were created. Mankind was created to be in relationship with God, to have closeness with God. As the creator, God has three distinct rights, and he has more, but there are three distinct rights that are evident that God has as the creator. First of all, as the creator, God has the power to, can't see the O there, the power to control. That's one of the rights that God has as the creator. As the one who creates, he can control his creation. He is in control. Also, one of the rights that God has is he has the right to judge. Why would he have the right to judge? Well, he's the one that created all things, and he can determine the standards as he sees fit. He alone is the judge. The third right that God has, again, there are many rights, but three very distinct rights, is he is the one that deserves all praise. When Adam and Eve were created in the garden, Adam and Eve recognized those three things that were exclusively God's. And so Adam and Eve in the garden realized he is in control. He is the one who has the right to judge. He is the one that deserves all praise. Now, after sin entered into the picture, mankind, because of the sinful nature, took from God what was rightly his. So now, mankind, because of the sin nature, we as people want to be in control. We want to judge. In other words, we want to set the standards of what is right and wrong, and we want to be praised. All of those three things summarize most of the problems that people have in life. I want to be in control. Maybe even some of the marriage issues that you have. It's a battle for control. Who is going to be in control? I want to be in control. Or We judge each other based upon standards that we set. These are not God's standards. These are standards that you and I come up with, and we judge people according to the standards that we set. And if they don't meet the standards that we set, we punish them because of that. There is not a marriage around that doesn't have this as a problem, that you are judging each other, you're setting standards and expectations upon each other that are not God's, they're your standards and expectations, and when the other person fails to live up to them, we punish them. Well, that's a part of the fall, and we want to be praised. So we want the praise and the adoration. How much of the things that we do is because we want to be noticed. We want to be seen. Look at all of social media and the posts that people do. It's in order to be noticed and to be seen and to be somebody. When we are in our sin, we naturally have those three things that we are doing on our own. We want to control, we want to judge, and we want to be praised. But what happens when we come to a relationship with Christ? Well, when we come to a relationship with Christ, now instead of us being in control, now we start to recognize God's rightful place. God, it's not about me, it's about you. It's not my will, it's your will. God, it's your standards. I need to live up to your standards, and I need to help other people live up to your standards. We can't compromise on your standards and say that they do not exist, so we need to live up according to them. And God, we need to come to you and worship. That's what praise is. God, it's not about me. It's about you. Jesus demonstrated this in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was facing the cross. Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, it's not my will, but yours that needs to be done. God, it's not about me, it's about your will. What is your plan? When he was teaching the disciples how to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He starts the whole thing out with his name being praised. And so that's all about these things. When we judge, we do so out of the sinfulness in our hearts. And so, why do I bring all of that up? Well, when our hearts are divided, we naturally, even though we have been born again and we have become a Christian, because our hearts are divided, we are still falling into the trap of, I want to be in control, I want to judge, and I want praise. Where's that coming out of? It's coming out of myself, the self side of my heart. But when I surrender my heart and I surrender it all to Christ and I submit myself to Him, I draw near to Him in humility, I come to Him in brokenness, and I ask for Him to fill me. When that happens, the result of all of that then becomes that when my heart is completely surrendered to Him, now I don't want control. I don't want my standards. I don't want to be a judge. I don't want praise. I want it all to go to you, God. So if you are judging, there's a good chance that you are still dealing with a divided heart. If you are seeking for control, you have a divided heart. If you are needing praise and you are needing to be the center of attention, good chance you still have a divided heart. Now, God is always working on us. I mean, we always have flaws and defects that God is always working on, but there are major ones that change instantly when I surrender everything that I am to Him. My tongue changes in the way that I use my words. The words coming out of my mouth change. My attitude changes. My desire for control changes. My desire for judging others changes. My desire for praise and needing to be the center of attention changes. All of that changes when I have a surrendered heart to the Lord. So that is James's teaching to us through most of the book of James. He is continuously challenging us on what it means to really deal with yourself, to really submit yourself to God, to resist the devil, and allow God to work in your life. He says to us, draw near, and God will draw near to you. When you draw near to Him, there is a promise given. He will draw near to you. You draw near to Him in worship. You draw near to Him in praise. You draw near to Him in prayer. You draw near to Him by asking His counsel. You draw near to Him by enjoying the communion, the fellowship with God. You draw near to Him in just the general course and the attitude of your life. And when you draw near to God, it helps you to resist the devil. It helps you to become pure. It helps you to have a heart for people. It helps you to speak well of people. And it helps you to have your mind focus not on the here and now, but on things that will matter for all eternity. So humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. And when you do, the promise is given. He will lift you up. Well, that's all I have for you today. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me, and join me back here again next time as we pick it up in James chapter 4, starting in verse 11. See you then.